Thank you for rejoining us in our Universal Canon of Literature series. Today we're going to be looking at one of the lesser known works by Plato, which of course constitute his dialogues. Just briefly, to summarize basic details of any person attempting to appreciate the works of Plato is concerned. Plato did not, of course, write the dialogues himself. What he was attempting to do was to recapture the essence of the teachings of his master, his teacher, Socrates. And he used an already established mode of writing, which is basically that of the dialogue. Now, his master, Socrates, was in an intellectual tug of war with a group of so-called sophists. Sophists, of course, is the Greek root. It's derived from the Greek root for wisdom. They claim to be seekers of wisdom. But by the time of Socrates' day, which of course Plato enshrines for us in the dialogues, the sophists had already degenerated, had been corrupted, basically into just traveling circus men looking for extra cash, usually in the form of duping students into making them think that through their system of sophistry, they could arrive at all knowledge. And Socrates says, bunk, nonsense, mushugana, not going to happen. Remember this background as we now undertake a look at the Crito, which is also pronounced in English as the Crito. Now, the Crito by Plato, basically written sometime in the early 5th century B.C.E., that this and other works of Plato dealing with the last days and death of Socrates were written after Socrates' death in 339 BCE is a certain, but exact dates are uncertain. The Crito's aim appears to be to establish for all time the integrity of Plato's master, that is Socrates. The character of Socrates is cast in one light only, that of the model citizen, the good citizen. And back up a bit here. It is from the Greeks that we inherit this idea of the polis, which is Greek, of course, for city-state. Greece had no unified or centralized government at the time. It was a ragtag assortment of various city-states, at the head of which was a city-state king. Now, of course, Athens was ancient Greece's most celebrated city-state, and both Socrates and Plato were good citizens of Athens. And yes, I am reading from a verbatim from a book, and which I will stop to explain along the way. Socrates has been unjustly condemned, for he will give up his life, because such is the law of the land. Crito visits Socrates with a plan of escape from the prison where the latter awaits execution, and it is here that the argument ensues. All consideration of loss of personal reputation or injury to his children, Socrates dismisses. His only desire is to discover what is right and then do the right. In other words, Socrates is practicing what he preaches, because throughout the dialogues we encounter these main attributes of what constitutes not only the good citizen, but what ensures our place in the cosmos in the interest of harmony. These are the attributes or great traits which Socrates as categorized as truth, goodness, and beauty, wisdom, among others. But here, we're concerned with truth and justice. And these are not personified attributes. These are attributes which are part of the human condition, which characterize and best describe our sojourn here on earth. Are we good people? Do we follow justice? Not just social justice, but justice altogether. And of course, later, through the writings of Plato and Aristotle and then the Romans, we would be informed that justice is blind. And it is at this moment that Socrates is clamoring for just that. He wants justice applied to his case, but if he can't have it, he will exit this world with the integrity with which he lived his life. Continuing, his only desire is to discover what is right and then do the right. Probably Plato invented this incident in order to put his master in a good light. I'm a scholar who doubts that. I'm a scholar who believes in looking at the source material that we have. And if we find any salient contradictions, or what are definitely, without a doubt, interpolations or later additions, then we call them out. But we don't call into question a book or a scene merely because we don't think so. We've got to have evidence with which to back any such assertions up. Shelley, the great British poet, 18th century poet, is of the opinion that Socrates did well to die rather than escape. Does not like the, quote, sophistical, unquote, reasons put in his mouth by Plato in the Crito. That tells us something about the character of Percy Bysshe Shelley. Albeit a great romantic poet whose wife, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, would go on to immortalize Frankenstein, her own creation, Shelley was the eternal rebel. Shelley, of course, would see this as sophistical because Shelley lived a life unrestrained by too much emotion and not enough logic, it could be argued. He died at the age of 29. But getting back to our friend Socrates. But it is improbable that Plato intended to answer the question of casuistry. Casuistry is a highfalutin word for sophistry, or disingenuousness, or subterfuge, or deception in scholarly and academic practices. More likely, he only desired to show that in the face of imminent death, Socrates adhered to the opinions he had professed all his life. This he succeeds in doing in this celebrated dialogue. All I'm going to add to this is that Crito is an integral part of our understanding the life and death of Socrates. For when Socrates was put on trial, indeed his whole life was in review, not only for himself, but for posterity, for generations. Also, the apologia, or the apology of Socrates, is part of this cycle. That is Socrates looking for justice. And an interesting synthesis of both Crito and the apology would be the work known as Phaedo. Looks like Phaedo, but the Latin AE is I, and it comes from the Greek Phaido. If you're going to transliterate it into English, it is pronounced Phaedo. In the dialogue of Phaedo, we are introduced to Socrates' lofty and beautiful conceptions of what lies in the hereafter, in the beyond, when we have, as Shakespeare says, shuffled off this mortal coil. Thank you for joining us in yet another segment of our universal canon of literature. Join us again as we search the bookshelves for yet another title, which constitutes what we used to call the Western canon of literature, but which is best, in light of recent developments, to be renamed the universal canon of literature, so as to be inclusive of all the great world classics. See you next time.